So people in the comment sections really worried about the price of the PS5 Pro and whether it will come without a disc in the box. The thing is that that's the only thing that got leaked for now. It's still not clear whether there will be only a discless version. What if they only put out a discless version of PS5 Pro and you need to buy the disc drive separately? Honestly, the more I think about it, I'd probably go for it. Hear me out. I already got the Slim, yeah? So we know that the Pro is compatible with the Slim's detachable disc drive. I'd just swap it out and sell the Slim and a pretty cheap price. Let's say $300 USD. It's still a win-win for me. But if you have the fat PS5, I can see that being a sting, or even worse, PS4 Pro, though I do have to agree that this move would be a fudged up move from Sony's part. Next comment. My favorite type of comment, actually. Fake news? PS5 Pro not cost $750 USD. Stop disinformation, please. The price is speculative, sir. That's not what your title says. Confirmation is not the same as speculation. 100% clickbait. Okay, look. There are confirmations in the video, and there are speculations and predictions in the video. I'm doing my best to simplify the wording in my videos, but it seems that some people can't separate fact and speculation, or even listen or watch the entire video. I'm researching the leaks for over a year now, and I have a business background, and you don't know how many thousands of clickbait videos and articles I'm going through to bring accurate information. So the PS5 Pro price is not 100% confirmed yet, although Sony is getting a tiny bit greedier. I predicted this in the beginning of the year. That's why I always said I'm not thrilled about PS5 outselling Xbox 5-1. If Microsoft would hold at least 40% of the market with at least 3 killer Xbox exclusives, the PS5 would already be $400 and PS5 Pro $499, $550. But if PS5 Pro will retail at $550, it'll be a pretty pleasant surprise for me too. Lastly, another disappointing thing I want to highlight is that the new PS5 Pro will not come with the new version of DualSense V2 in the box. In case you don't know what V2 is, well, that's basically the new DualSense controller, which supposedly will have a 12-hour battery life and enhanced haptic feedback, rumored to be even more advanced than the DualSense Edge, which costs $250. Well, if it's the rumors about the tech is really true, it does sound a bit too good to be true to come in the box, right? I'd guess that this new V2 model will be the next-gen DualSense Edge that Sony will advertise, probably at the same price as the previous model, and maybe discontinue the current DualSense Edge. All in all, it's a bit of a bummer. It would have been great to have an upgraded controller in the box just like they did with PS4 Pro controller. All right, and with that out of the way, let's get into today's topic. Dragon's Dogma 2 is still very unstable with its unlocked frame rate, even though there is now a 30 FPS cap available. That cap is actually the more ideal option for that game. We've seen some high-performance mode games that aren't necessarily locked at 60 FPS, which has sparked a lot of discussions about achieving 60 FPS on consoles. Recently, we've seen more examples of games struggling to maintain a consistent 60 FPS, leading to a long-standing conversation about cross-gen games and console architectures. The consoles are very similar to the PlayStation 4, which makes cross-gen development financially advantageous. This is different from previous generations, where consoles had more bespoke designs and could often be optimized more effectively. We don't need to repeat that conversation, but I hope it's clear why the cross-gen period has been so extended, especially with how long games take to develop. Now, many publishers and bigger studios are beginning to target only the high-end console space, like the Series SX and PlayStation 5, which may push these consoles to their limits. Historically, frame rate is always the first thing to go in the console space. It took a long time to reach the point where offering performance modes and 60 FPS is standard on consoles, something we never saw on PlayStation 2, but is now common on PlayStation 5. Older consoles could always do 60 FPS, but it was often a matter of how a studio wanted to make the game, the scope, and the budget. Typically, they sacrificed frame rate to improve visual fidelity, which was crucial in marketing. Whether it was PS1, PS2, PS3, or even PS4, visual fidelity was the bread and butter. Now, people are used to having 60 FPS on consoles, so there's been a big complaint about recent titles only offering 30 FPS. With the PlayStation 5 Pro entering the scene, it's an interesting development. Like the PS4 Pro, which filled a niche role during the mass adoption of 4K TVs, there's a question of whether we really need a PlayStation 5 Pro. The PS4 Pro made sense at the time to retain hardcore PlayStation users and prevent them from moving to PC by offering 4K image quality with checkerboard rendering. Now, there's debate over whether we even need a PlayStation 5 Pro. Some argue that we could have gone the entire cycle without it, considering the diminishing returns we see today. Technologies like PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution, PSSR, and ray tracing are visually impressive, but we could have waited another 4 years for PlayStation 6. However, there's a curiosity about whether the PS5 Pro might sell better than the PS4 Pro. The PS4 Pro was also a low-volume product aimed at enthusiasts. At that time, only 1 in every 5 PS4s sold was a Pro model. It wasn't a mass product, but it was still valuable for Sony to retain high-spending customers. With more awareness of frame rates today, the PS5 Pro might have a higher sales ratio, possibly 2 out of every 5 PS5s sold being a Pro model. That, of course, depends on whether the PS5 Pro's enhancements will focus on offering a stable 60 FPS or better performance than the base model. Sony has a mandate for parity, meaning there can't be exclusive software or modes for the PS5 Pro, but developers can increase performance for the base PS5 settings. This could include adding ray tracing, increasing frame rates, and improving resolution targets. We'll likely see a range of third-party games with varied levels of optimization, but first-party titles will probably showcase the PS5 Pro's capabilities best. Games like Spider-Man 2, God of War, Ragnarok, and Forbidden West are expected to receive patches that utilize PSSR and other features to demonstrate the console's true potential. The PS5 Pro won't necessarily be a one-size-fits-all solution for all the unstable third-party games out there. Many first-party games already run well at 60 FPS on their performance settings, or they offer a 120 FPS mode where you can play at 40 FPS with high visual fidelity. Ultimately, a lot still depends on how well studios optimize their games and whether they offer proper 120 FPS modes on PlayStation 5 or the Pro. The PS5 Pro will likely have a retroactive boost setting to improve the performance of existing games. If a base PS5 game is unstable now, it should perform better on the Pro, but that's not a guarantee that it will be a perfect 60 FPS machine. CPU-bound games, for instance, won't benefit much from the PS5 Pro, which only has a slight CPU performance bump over the standard PS5. As we approach the console's announcement, it seems there could be more demand for it than people expect. While some question the need for a PS5 Pro, it's clear that depending on the price, likely around $600, it could appeal to enthusiasts who prioritize higher frame rates and prefer playing on consoles. The hardware limitations myth. Many developers often cite hardware limitations when questioned about the realism or lack thereof in their games. However, with titles like Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us Part 2, and other PlayStation exclusives pushing the boundaries, it's hard to accept that excuse. It's not just about powerful hardware, but how developers optimize and utilize that hardware. Dragon's Dogma Performance, Rise of Ronin graphics, Jedi Survivor, and FF Rebirth are all heading towards more 30 FPS games. Despite this, first-party PS5 games remain unmatched in graphics and performance. In my humble opinion, these games match or even surpass the graphics of newer games mentioned. Sure, those games might have sharper textures in some areas or more detailed leaves, but the polish isn't there. In Dragon's Dogma 2, you can literally see NPCs popping in. In Rise of the Ronin, textures and foliage pop in right next to you, which, combined with 30 FPS, is beyond comprehension. I'm not saying graphics are everything. If they were, I wouldn't be playing 5-year-old games. If I prioritized graphics and cared about every pixel and anisotropic filtering, I'd just get a gaming rig with a GTX 4080. It's not about that. I don't mind if Rise of Ronin doesn't reach the pinnacle of AAA graphics with facial animations comparable to Forbidden West. However, if your game looks like that, you better guarantee me that it will run above 60 FPS with no pop-ins. In Spider-Man 2, I'm flying through the city at 60 FPS in performance mode and barely notice any pop-ins. When I played Ghost of Tsushima on the PS4 base model 3 years ago, I don't recall ever seeing pop-in, nor did I have moments that broke my immersion. Yet I had moments every hour while riding my horse through the open world where I just stopped and looked at it in awe during every cutscene, fully immersed. Dragon's Dogma's story and gameplay are great, receiving 10 out of 10 reviews. However, I do not recommend playing it on PS5, as it runs at 30 FPS uncapped. Even with a 120Hz TV and VRR activated, it won't boost your FPS by 10, unlike in Spider-Man 2, where VRR can uncap the FPS and play in fidelity mode at 40 FPS, a very good compromise for native 4K and full ray tracing enabled. Developers can claim it's not possible due to certain textures and on-screen activities, but they should stop treating people as if they're naive. Consider how much is happening on the screen in Forbidden West when you fight 5 machines plus a big machine boss and human enemies, yet it stays at 60 FPS. The same goes for Spider-Man 2. In my late-game footage, I don't see frames dropping. The Last of Us Part 2 on PS5 showcases photorealism at its best, with highly detailed environments, facial animations, clothing quality, all running at 60 FPS. I don't believe the PS5 is outdated. It seems developers or perhaps publishers are rushing to release games, then daring to claim the game is so demanding due to everything happening on screen. Rumors about GTA 6 suggest it might struggle to run at 60 FPS on the base PS5, given its level of detail and scope. If a game can achieve 60 FPS on the PS5, it should at least match GTA 6's graphical quality and scope. And this is where foveal concept comes in. In video game development, this principle is applied quite strategically to enhance both the visual appeal and performance of games. Here's a closer look at how it's done. Since characters often carry the emotional weight and narrative of the game, developers pour extra effort into making them as detailed and lifelike as possible. This means using more complex models, more polygons, and higher resolution textures for characters, enabling nuanced expressions and dynamic animations that connect players to the game on a deeper level. While lush, detailed environments are beautiful, they can be resource-intensive. To keep games running smoothly, developers might dial back the detail on far-off mountains or background scenery using techniques like level of detail management. This approach adjusts the complexity of models based on their distance from the player, ensuring that the game looks good without taxing the system too much. Just like in a painting, game designers carefully craft scenes to guide your attention. They might place a key character in a beam of light or against a less busy background, making them stand out. This not only highlights the character, but also helps players intuitively understand where to look and go next. Naughty Dog and Sucker Punch Studios, through their respective titles, have demonstrated an exceptional understanding of foveal art. In games like The Last of Us Part 2 and Ghost of Tsushima, attention to detail is strategically placed on characters and key environmental elements that players interact with or focus on the most. This results in characters that exhibit lifelike expressions and movements, enhancing the emotional depth and connection players feel towards them. For instance, Ghost of Tsushima captivates players with its breathtaking landscapes and meticulously detailed character models. The game prioritizes the detailing of protagonist Jin Sakai and the key NPCs, ensuring that facial expressions and movements are as realistic as possible. The environment, while expansive and beautiful, smartly uses less detail in distant areas, maintaining performance without sacrificing the overall visual quality. Similarly, Horizon Forbidden West showcases an incredibly detailed world, with Aloy and other central characters receiving the highest level of detail. The game's environments are rich and vibrant, with a focus on areas and objects that players are most likely to interact with or observe closely. Moving on to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Dragon's Dogma 2, we can observe where the application of foveal art faces challenges. While both games strive to deliver visually engaging experiences, certain decisions in where to allocate detail have impacted their overall aesthetic and potential longevity. For example, there was a discussion where people complained about yellow paint markers placed in the world to direct players where to go. The developers explained that this was necessary because the textures and the world are beginning to look so realistic. The characters in Rebirth look anime and heavily stylized. So why are you working so hard to make the world look so realistic? To me, it looks a bit off. I think the world could have benefited from a more stylized look and probably would look better in my opinion. Dragon's Dogma 2, in particular, illustrates the pitfalls of not applying the concept of foveal art effectively. The game appears to invest heavily in ground textures and foliage, which, while impressive up close, detracts from the characters themselves. The characters, arguably the most crucial element for player connection and immersion, look subpar in comparison. This imbalance not only makes the game feel outdated upon release, but also suggests it will age poorly as graphical standards continue to evolve. To improve both the game's performance and visual appeal, developers could have adopted a different approach by leveraging the principles of foveal art more effectively. Here's what could have been done differently. 1. Prioritize character detailing. By focusing more resources on enhancing character models and animations, developers could ensure that characters stand out with crisp, detailed visuals. This would foster a deeper emotional connection between players and characters. Implement dynamic detailing. Utilizing techniques that dynamically adjust the level of detail based on the player's focus can significantly improve performance without sacrificing visual quality. For example, environments and background elements could be rendered with less detail when they are not the focus, allowing the game to allocate more resources to characters and immediate surroundings. By understanding how players' eyes move across the screen, developers can strategically place high-detail elements where they are most likely to be noticed, while simplifying less critical areas. By applying these strategies, developers of Dragon's Dogma 2 could have not only improved the game's performance, but also its overall visual presentation.